Good day from the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov on the outskirts of Moscow, where at this hour, Russian flight controllers working in tandem with the U.S. flight controllers at the Johnson Space Center in Houston are preparing for the return to Earth of 3 of the crew members of the International Space Station. Good morning to all on NASA television and around the world as we begin our coverage of the return to Earth of Expedition 50 Commander Shane Kimbrough of NASA and Roscosmos cosmonauts Andrei Borisenko and Sergei Ryzhikov, who are wrapping up 173 days in space, 171 days aboard the International Space Station, and a journey of 73.2 million miles. At this hour, the Soyuz MS-02 spacecraft that is docked to the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station has been placed on autonomous power, no longer on International Space Station power, where it had been since its docking back on October 21st of last year. The Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the station will be the port from which the Soyuz departs when it undocks from the International Space Station. That undocking is scheduled at 2:57 a.m. Central Time, which will be 10:57 here in Moscow. But first, we'll be standing by here in the next few minutes for the crew, the departing crew of Kimbrough, Borisenko, and Ryzhikov to say farewell to the 3 remaining crew members on the International Space Station who will stay aboard for several more months, that being the new expedition and ISS commander, Peggy Whitson, who took over control of the International Space Station in a ceremony on Sunday morning. We'll be replaying that in just a few minutes. Whitson, joined by her colleagues, Oleg Novitsky and Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency, will be a 3-person crew for the next 10 days as Expedition 51. They will wind up greeting 2 additional crew members, that being NASA's Jack Fisher and Roscosmos cosmonaut Fyodor Yurchikhin, who will be launching from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on April 20th to round out a 5-person crew once they complete a 4-orbit, 6-hour rendezvous from the launch pad at Baikonur toward their docking also at the Poisk module of the International Space Station. Again, all preparations are continuing to go by the book for the departure of Kimbrough, Ryzhikov, and Borisenko. Down at the landing site in Kazakhstan, just to the southeast of the remote town of Zhezkazgan, the search and recovery forces comprising the Rosaviatsa search and recovery team, as well as a team of NASA support personnel led by Sean Fuller, the Director of Human Spaceflight Programs in Russia. They are currently in the staging city of Karaganda. All of the NASA personnel will be flying down on an Antonov 26, a fixed-wing aircraft, down to the town of Zhezkazgan, where they will board a series of helicopters to take off right around the time of the deorbit burn for a short flight to the landing site about 89 miles to the southeast, where they will be staged landing in those helicopters one by one in a circular pattern to provide assistance for the trio of returning crew members once they land in their Soyuz MS-02 spacecraft to wrap up this mission. At the Johnson Space Center in Houston, the Orbit 1 team is on console at this hour, having just taken a handover from the Orbit 3 team. The Orbit 1 team, who will be working with their Russian counterparts in support of landing operations today, is led by Flight Director Emily Nelson. She will be on console throughout the course of the deep overnight hours, providing all of the support that is required. She'll be joined on console by a pair of spacecraft communicators. Right now, Jay Marshke is on console. He will be joined later on in the morning by veteran NASA astronaut Don Pettit, who will be providing Soyuz vehicle expertise to the flight control team in Houston as the day moves along. On the far right side of your screen is Flight Director Vincent LaCourte, who is joining Nelson on console for today's undocking and landing activities. The day's timeline is unfolding. landing operations down in Kazakhstan in the early morning hours U.S. time, which will be the mid to late afternoon time frame in Kazakhstan. They've left their hotel in Karaganda, making their way now to the airport in Zhezkazgan in Karaganda to board a plane, an Antonov 26 aircraft that will fly about 2 hours to the southwest to the town of Zhezkazgan, where they will meet up with the search and recovery forces from Rosaviatsa, and will begin the process of boarding helicopters that will take them down to the landing site. The landing will be supported today by a dozen Russian helicopters, the Mi-8 helicopters that you have become familiar with other landing operations in the past. There will be 8 helicopters that will be flying directly from Zhezkazgan to the landing site, about 89 miles to the southeast. 2 additional helicopters will be flying also just directly south of Zhezkazgan, which will be the midway point between the prime landing site and what is known as the ballistic landing site, well to the southwest of the prime landing site. That would be the location that the Soyuz would touch down at in the unlikely event that a problem occurred that would result in the Soyuz incurring a steeper than usual, a steeper than nominal descent, and a shortfall of their prime landing site by several hundred miles. However, the ballistic landing site will also be populated by a pair of Russian Mi-8 helicopters, 2 at the midway point that could go either to the prime landing site or the backup landing site, and 8 prime helicopters going to the prime landing site, where we fully expect Kimbrough, Ryzhikov, and Borisenko to touch down with a landing time of 6:21 and 5 seconds a.m. Central Time, which will be 5:21 p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan, 2 hours and 43 minutes before sunset. You're looking at Oleg Novitsky with the headset on, his back to the camera, as he assists Sergei Ryzhikov, who will be the Soyuz commander. Ryzhikov's Soyuz call sign is Favor, which is another word for Mount Tabor, which is a sacred location of the Holy Land located in northern Israel. After undocking, you will hear the Russian flight controllers calling Favor to Ryzhikov aboard the Soyuz spacecraft as he provides verbal cues and descent information as the Soyuz first departs away from the International Space Station and then finally heads back to Earth after its deorbit burn, a 4-minute, 38-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz engines. That deorbit burn to occur at 5:28 a.m. Central Time. That will result in the Soyuz dropping out of the Earth's atmosphere for its high-speed entry back to the landing site in Kazakhstan. You're seeing the camera that is being operated by Thomas Pesquet on board the International Space Station, doing a visual inspection of the hatchway of the Soyuz, the interface between the MS-02 spacecraft and the Poisk module, to make sure that there's no foreign object debris, that it's clean as a whistle and ready for hatch closure. That will be coming just a few minutes from now, after the crew members have an opportunity to say goodbye to one another.
Все видео приняли, отлично, спасибо, главное успели. Можно готовиться.
We received all the video. Thank you, it was excellent. You need to prepare the video camera for the PAO. Yes, we concur.
At this hour, the International Space Station is flying 256 statute miles above the Earth, moving from southwest to northeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. All of the station's systems are in excellent shape. Again, some of the statistics involved with the final hours of Expedition 50. Once this crew undocks and touches down on the steppe of Kazakhstan later today, they will have completed 173 days in space, 171 days aboard the International Space Station. Theirs was a two-day rendezvous from their launch on October 19th last year from Baikonur to the International Space Station. This trio, Kimbrough, Ryzhikov, and Borisenko, will have completed 2,768 orbits of the Earth, a journey of 73.2 million statute miles. Ryzhikov, in this first flight into space for him, will have logged 173 days in space, of course, during two increments, expeditions 49 and 50. Andrei Borisenko, wrapping up his second long-duration mission in space, will have accrued 337 days in space at the time of landing. And Shane Kimbrough, wrapping up his second flight into space, the first space shuttle mission back in 2008. Kimbrough will have logged 173 days in space on this flight and a total of 189 days on his two flights. This trio saw the arrival of 5 visiting vehicles during their half year in orbit. One orbital ATK Cygnus cargo craft, that was the OA-5 mission. One Russian Progress resupply ship, 66 Progress. One SpaceX Dragon resupply ship, the CRS-10 mission that arrived at the International Space Station. There was one Japanese HTV vehicle, the H-2 transfer vehicle. You can see Borisenko posing for some final pictures that are being taken by his crewmates as they prepare to say goodbye for the final time and close the hatch. That Japanese HTV resupply ship supplied new lithium-ion batteries for the power supply on the port side of the International Space Station. Lithium-ion batteries were installed during a series of EVAs. Also, one Soyuz crew vehicle arrived during the time that Ryzhikov, Borisenko, and Kimbrough were on board. That, of course, the Soyuz MSO-3 that carried Oleg Novitsky, Peggy Whitson, and Thomas Pesquet to the International Space Station. And you can see Sergei Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander, as he moves one of the Sokol launch and entry suits into the Soyuz vehicle itself. There are 3 sections to that Soyuz vehicle. The top section is called the orbital module. The middle section, where the crew will be strapped in for entry and landing, is called the descent module. Ryzhikov, as the Soyuz commander, will be in the center seat of that Soyuz descent module. He'll be flanked on his left by Borisenko, who is the board engineer number 1, and Shane Kimbrough will be on his right as board engineer number 2. In the foreground, there in the passageway right at the hatchway of the Soyuz vehicle is Russian cosmonaut Oleg Novitsky. Novitsky, of course, will stay on board the International Space Station with the new station commander, Peggy Whitson, now in command of the complex for the second time in her career. They and Thomas Pesquet will remain as a three-person crew for the next 10 days until the launch on April 20th of Jack Fisher, the next NASA astronaut who will reside aboard the International Space Station, along with Russian cosmonaut and veteran space station cosmonaut Fyodor Yurchikhin. On June 2nd, Novitsky and Pesquet will return to Earth as a two-man crew aboard their Soyuz vehicle, leaving Whitson on board. She recently received approval for an extended mission that will keep her on board until September 3rd. She will be returning home on that date with Fisher and Yurchikhin to wrap up a mission of 289 days in duration. Good view of Shane Kimbrough, who has been the commander of the International Space Station for several months now, the Expedition 50 commander, having an opportunity to share a few final words with his crewmates before he makes his way inside the Soyuz vehicle to begin the process of closing the hatch, conducting leak checks on both sides of that interface between the Poisk module and the Soyuz MS-02 spacecraft before the pressure is equalized on both sides of the interface, and the passageway is brought down to vacuum to enable the undocking of the Soyuz. And again, undocking is scheduled at 2:57 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time. The undocking command, the command that's issued by the Russian flight controllers here in Korolyov to begin the process of opening the hooks that have held the Soyuz in place to the docking port at the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the International Space Station. That undocking command will be issued at 2:56 a.m. Central Time. It takes about 90 seconds for springs on both sides of the docking interface to push off against one another and to enable physical separation, which is the point of undocking itself. At the time of undocking, Expedition 50 technically comes to an end in terms of the station's history log, and Expedition 51, under the command of Peggy Whitson, will formally begin. There will be two separation burns that will be conducted of the Soyuz engines. The first burn that will occur about 3 minutes after physical separation, the undocking itself. That first separation burn will be 8 seconds in duration, about a half a meter per second to increase the opening rate between the Soyuz and the International Space Station. And then a minute and a half after that, just before 3:02 a.m. Central Time, a second burn of 15 seconds in duration to increase the opening rate by 1.5 meters per second will be conducted. The Soyuz will then drift away over the course of the next couple of hours after that to a safe distance away from the International Space Station, where the deorbit burn will be executed. That will be a retrograde burn, a braking maneuver, if you will, of 4 minutes and 38 seconds in duration to enable the Soyuz to drop out of orbit to begin its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. Some 27 minutes after the deorbit burn, the three sections of the Soyuz spacecraft will pyrotechnically separate. That will occur at 5:55 a.m. Central Time. That will occur to enable the Soyuz descent module, the only section of the Soyuz that survives the return to Earth, to have the heat shield pointed in the direction of travel as plasma begins to build up and to ablate around the Soyuz spacecraft while the Soyuz and its three occupants are passing through the Earth's atmosphere. Once they move into the lower regions of the Earth's atmosphere, they will exit that plasma regime. Maximum G loads on the crew will build up to about 4 to 5 times Earth's gravity, and that will be followed by the command to open up the parachutes on the Soyuz vehicle about 15 minutes before touchdown.
Vehicle already? You have transferred them, correct? The crew is in the vehicle already, Moscow.
Да, мы видим.
Yes, we can see that, Oleg.
And there is a final farewell between Peggy Whitson and Shane Kimbrough, Thomas Pesquet, Oleg Novitsky. The final farewells before the hatch will be closed, and Expedition 50 will begin its final preparations to return to Earth. Final goodbyes now from the departing crew as they will begin the process of closing the hatch. That will be followed by the closing of the hatch to the Poisk module. Borisenko, Ryzhikov, and Kimbrough now inside the vehicle that will return them to Earth and wrap up a 173-day mission just a few hours from now.
We see that everything is nominal. The quality of the image is good. So you can start performing the procedure of the hatch closure. So the crew in the vehicle first closes the hatch, correct, Moscow? Yes. We confirm. The Soyuz crew first closes their hatch. Okay, I'll be standing by, Moscow.
Пусть нам подтвердят выполнение подготовки к закрытию.
Let the crew confirm that they have prepared for the closure, for the hatch closure.
Подтверждаю.
They confirm. This is Oleg. They confirm. All right, copy.
This is Mission Control Korolyov. Once again, you're looking at the hatchway between the Poisk module and the Soyuz MSO-2 spacecraft. Soyuz commander Sergei Ryzhikov there in the field of view, running through the procedures, wiping down the hatch to make sure there's no foreign object debris that would create any issues with a solid leak check. Once we get to that here a short time from now, we're standing by for the actual closure of the hatch. The crew inside the Soyuz having said farewell to the three remaining crew members on board the station, Commander Peggy Whitson, Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency, and Russian cosmonaut Oleg Novitsky, who will be they will become Expedition 51 at the time of physical separation, the actual undocking of the Soyuz from Poisk, that is scheduled at 2:57 a.m. Central Time, about not quite 3 hours from now. And the hatch on the Soyuz MS-02 is now closed at 11:40, should say 12:45, 11:45 p.m. Central Time, 7:45 a.m. Moscow time. The Soyuz MS-02 hatch is closed. The first step on the road home for Expedition 50. The next step will be the closure of the hatch on the Poisk module side of the International Space Station. But again, hatch closure marked at 11:45 p.m. Central Time, 12:45 a.m. Eastern Time, as Borisenko, Ryzhikov, and Kimbrough are now inside the Soyuz vehicle. With the hatch having been closed, the crew will begin a process of a couple of hours of leak checks. The vestibule leak checks on both sides of that docking interface will be followed by the crew suiting up in their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits. The Soyuz was placed on autonomous power about an hour or so ago. All of its systems are reported in excellent shape, and now Oleg Novitsky is in the process of closing the Poisk hatch. Again, 7:45 a.m. Moscow time, 11:45 p.m. Central Time. The Soyuz hatch closed, and now the Poisk module hatch has been closed 1.5 minutes later. So both hatches are now closed, setting the stage for the undocking of the Soyuz from the International Space Station, with the undocking scheduled at 2:57 a.m. Central Time, just a few hours from now.
Moscow Station on Space to Ground 2 for Oleg. Go ahead. The hatch is closed.
Я вас понял.
I copy.
Видели картинку, спасибо.
Oleg, we are receiving the image. Thank you. Should I leave keep the camera here for a while, or should I leave the recording on?
Можно отключать.
Could you please repeat your last? Moscow, favore, how copy?
Favore, я на связи.
Favore, go ahead. This is Moscow.
Выполнили ручное закрытие крышки.
We closed the BOSU hatch.
Крышка закрыта.
Я вас понял.
The transfer hatch is closed.
Принято на станции.
This is Sergey. Copy. So the station hatch.
This is Mission Control Korolyov. Once again, with the hatches closed on both sides of the docking interface aboard the International Space Station, the final farewells between the crew taking place just a few minutes ago as Shane Kimbrough, the Expedition 50 commander, and his Russian crewmates, Soyuz commander Sergei Ryzhikov and flight engineer Andrei Borisenko, made their way inside the Soyuz spacecraft after saying farewell to their counterparts Peggy Whitson, Oleg Novitsky, and Thomas Pesquet. The Soyuz hatch was closed at 11:45 p.m. Central Time. The Poisk hatch on the station side of the docking interface, the space-facing side of the International Space Station's Russian segment, swung closed at 7:46 a.m. Moscow time, 11:46 p.m. Central Time. So the two hatches are closed. The crew now will spend some time conducting leak checks on both sides of the docking interface to make sure we have a tight seal before the vestibule of the small passageway at the docking interface is brought down to vacuum in preparation for the undocking of the Soyuz, with the undocking schedule at 2:57 a.m. Central Time on Monday morning. It was Sunday morning when the 6 crew members on board the International Space Station gathered in the Destiny Laboratory of the International Complex to provide what is now a familiar activity, the change of command ceremony. This change of command on Sunday morning saw Shane Kimbrough hand over the reins of the International Space Station to Peggy Whitson.
Station Houston on 2. Everything's looking good, and we are ready for the event.
Okay, Houston and everybody, welcome to the change of command ceremony between Expeditions 50 and 51. Crews are behind me here. We're ready to do this thing and get Expedition 50 off of here so 51 can enjoy their experience even more. But we've had a great time up here. It's been an amazing experience for almost 6 months now for Andrei and Sergei and I, and we've gotten to enjoy Peggy and Thomas and Oleg for about 4.5 months of that, so that's pretty unusual, but we've really enjoyed having them around. It's really neat to be part of something this big, something bigger than ourselves for one, but even bigger than a nation. It's, you know, we get the ability up here to interact with things that actually benefit all of humanity. So it's really humbling for one, but very neat and special to be part of something like that. None of us could do any of this without the support of a lot of people, so I'll just try to thank a few. And I know I won't hit everybody, but first and foremost, I want to thank my family and friends who've really been incredibly strong with their support throughout this whole process, the training as well as the mission itself. We've had incredible support from the ground teams all across the globe, the mission control centers in Houston, Huntsville, Munich, Tsukuba, Japan, and Moscow, Russia, all led by our lead flight director, Amit. So Amit, special thanks to you and all the people who have worked many hours supporting our mission over the past 6 months. And there's many other people in those teams from the hardware side that actually make the equipment or that trained us on the equipment. So thanks to all of you as well. It's really neat and special to be part of such a huge team. And you guys really are the heroes of this mission. We're just up here executing your plans. So thank you for working so hard for us. We really appreciate it. Sergei and Andrei and I certainly want to thank Peggy and Oleg and Thomas. We've learned so much from you and just really enjoyed our time together. It's made this experience so much better having you on board. So with that, I'm going to turn command of the International Space Station over to Dr. Peggy Whitson. She will set another record at this moment. She's been doing this many times throughout the last few weeks, but she now becomes the first 2-time female commander of the International Space Station. The space station is in great hands with Peggy.
Well, up here we don't wear shoes, but Shane's leaving some really big socks for me to fill. But Expedition 50 has been incredibly successful, conducted 4 spacewalks, grappled 2 visiting vehicles. We packed and unpacked 3 cargo vehicles in relatively short order, and got an amazing amount of science done, all thanks to Expedition 50 crew and leadership of Shane Kimbrough.
We have very nice crew, we have excellent commander, and we have beautiful ground support, and we have unforgettable memories about our beautiful, nice spending time on board ISS. Thank you, everybody, and good luck, our moving friends.
Okay, thanks, Houston. Expedition 51 is in charge.
And Shane and Sergey and Andre, we copy all. We want to thank you for an amazing and excellent Expedition 50 here from Houston. And for Peggy, looking forward to continuing on this excellence in Expedition 51. It's been great working with you all.
That was a replay of the change of command ceremony that took place in the Destiny Laboratory of the International Space Station on Sunday morning, in which Shane Kimbrough, veteran NASA astronaut, handed off command of the International Complex to Peggy Whitson, who now is the first 2-time female station commander, adding record after record as the days unfold. She recently became the all-time female spacewalker when she completed the 8th spacewalk of her career, and also surpassed NASA's Sunny Williams for most cumulative time for spacewalking on her most recent spacewalk a couple of weeks ago. Whitson is mounting up the records as the days unfold. She soon will surpass Jeff Williams on April 24th, 2 weeks from today, for most time in space by an American astronaut. Williams currently holding the record of 534 days in space. Whitson will surpass that mark again on April 24th. She recently received approval to be extended past the departure of her crewmates, Oleg Novitsky and Thomas Pesquet, who will depart the station on June 2nd for their return to Earth. Whitson will remain on board with Jack Fisher and Fyodor Yurchikhin. Fisher and Yurchikhin will be launching from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on April 20th, and Whitson will stay on board the station throughout the summer to maintain a 3-person crew until the launch of Randy Bresnik, Paulo Nespoli, and Sergei Rosansky on July 28th. to restore a 6-person crew on board the complex. By the time Whitson lands on September 3rd, she will have completed a 289-day mission on this, her third long-duration mission aboard the International Space Station, and an aggregate total of 666 days in space, which will put her 7th on the all-time endurance list of all space travelers. So Whitson's impressive record, now the Expedition 51 commander. Expedition 51 will formally begin, despite the change of command ceremony yesterday. Expedition 51 will formally begin for the record books at the time of undocking, which is scheduled a little less than 3 hours from now. Down at the landing site in Kazakhstan, the NASA team of support personnel joining up with the Russian search and recovery forces known as Rosaviatsa. They are currently boarding an Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft to fly about 2 hours from Karaganda down to the town of Zhezkazgan, where that aircraft will be refueled and where the NASA and Russian recovery team will board Russian Mi-8 helicopters and will be deployed to the landing site about 89 miles to the southeast of Zhezkazgan to recover the crew once they touch down, with landing scheduled at 6:21 and 5 seconds a.m. Central Time on Monday morning. You can see the rest of our coverage for the rest of the morning, returning to the air at 1:30 a.m. Central Time, 2:30 a.m. Eastern Time with our undocking coverage. Again, the undocking scheduled at 2:57 a.m. Central Time. Soyuz landing coverage then will begin at 5 a.m. Central Time with the deorbit burn at 5:28, the landing itself at 6:21, as we said a moment ago.
Bell indicated not to navigate.
With the crew on board the Soyuz spacecraft at this hour, they will begin the process of leak checks that will lead to the undocking. Again, as we mentioned, that undocking scheduled at 2:57 a.m. Central Time. The Soyuz will conduct 2 separation burns to move a safe distance away from the International Space Station, where at 5:28 a.m. Central Time, a 4-minute, 38-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz engines and the deorbit burn will allow the Soyuz to descend into the Earth's atmosphere. At 5:55 a.m. Central Time, the pyrotechnic separation of the 3 modules of the Soyuz will take place. The crew in the descent module with the heat shield pointed in the direction of travel. Temperatures around the Soyuz will build up to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit until the Soyuz reaches the lower regime of the Earth's atmosphere. The command to open the parachutes will take place at 6:06 a.m. Central Time. The Soyuz will descend to the landing site in Kazakhstan to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. The main chute will finally deploy, and just a few seconds off the ground, soft landing engines will fire about 3 seconds before touchdown on a final braking maneuver, and the Soyuz MS-02 spacecraft will be home. Once the landing is confirmed, the search and recovery forces will be touching down in rapid succession in a circular pattern around the spacecraft to help extract Kimbrough, Borisenko, and Ryzhikov. The weather forecast at the landing site is expected to be ideal, with temperatures a balmy 61 degrees and light winds and scattered clouds expected to welcome the crew home after 173 days in space. Once they're extracted from the vehicle, they'll be placed in comfortable chairs for a few minutes to get their land legs back before they're carried in those chairs into a nearby inflatable medical tent to receive initial medical testing and to have a chance to readapt a bit to Earth's gravity, their first sensation of Earth's gravity tugging at their lower extremities for the first time in 6 months or so. The crew then will be flown by helicopter back to the staging city of Karaganda in 3 separate helicopters for a welcoming ceremony very late Monday night Kazakhstan time. Kimbrough will then board a NASA aircraft to fly back to the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Ryzhikov and Borisenko will board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to fly back to Chkalovsky Airfield on the outskirts of Star City, Russia, which is their training base, and a reunion with their families. So with the off-going Expedition 50 crew of Kimbrough, Ryzhikov, and Borisenko safely inside the Soyuz MSO-2 spacecraft, hatches were closed at 7:45 a.m. Moscow time, 11:45 p.m. on Sunday night Central Time. Leak checks are beginning. The crew then will don their Sokol launch and entry suits as the precursor to the final minutes of their time on board the International Space Station prior to their undocking that's coming up less than 3 hours from now. We will be back on the air at 2:30 a.m. Central Time, 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time with our undocking coverage. So rejoin us at that time on NASA television for all of the activities associated with the Expedition 50 crew as they are in the early stages of their return to Earth after 6 months in space. We'll see you back at 2:30 a.m. Central Time. Until then, this is Mission Control Korolyov.